Welcome back, everybody, to more from the Stabilize. I'm here today with Blake. How are we doing, Blake?
I'm doing well, thanks, Mitch.
That is good to hear, and today we're looking at a deck that I'm super hyped for. It's a shame that I didn't build it realistically. Blake's decided to build it instead, but that's okay. It's fine. It's the only deck that I've been talking about for the last 3 months, and that is Dark Box. And this gets a whole bunch of new tools to make it extra competitive. Two of them on the left-hand side that we'll talk about, but yeah, this deck just gets, theoretically, gets a lot better with Cosmic Eclipse.
It's really funny. When we were testing this for Worlds, I think we were just both thinking the same thing. It's just missing something. It just needs something else. And then I think relatively soon after that, we saw Great Catcher get revealed for the next set after Worlds, and we were like, "That's it. That's the card.
That's the thing that it needs."
It fixes it. It fixes all the problems. And then we also later down the line saw red and blue, and we're like, yep,
that's even better. That's super cool.
That's more stuff. And then the Silvally got revealed, and we're like, that's even more. It's got so much.
All these cards are the things that we were talking about.
Exactly. It's really funny because I'm super hyped for that. For the Reshiram and Zekrom tag team deck. Once that got revealed, this sort of was like at the back of my mind, but I'm still super excited for it because I really like the archetype. But we did sort of build the deck the other was more interested in the end, which is really funny.
Yeah, that's kind of.
They're gonna get represented, so whatever works is fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we'll just start with the Pokemon line now. And keep in mind that these evolution lines are going to be thicker than usual because we're trying to abuse red and blue tag team supporter as much as possible in this list. So we're just going to be playing a 3/3 Sneasel Weavile line. Feel free to choose. I would say the Sneaky Smash Sneasel was most likely the best one. I have two of the one from Unified Minds in there because I couldn't identify any other Sneaky Smash Sneasels in my bulk. So I just elected to grab the other two because it doesn't really matter. It's hardly going to come up, but if it does, you're probably better off having the Sneaky Smash one.
Yeah, exactly. Sneaky Smash gives you the opportunity, if you do go second, to remove an energy from the board, but with so much energy acceleration in these formats, it's not necessarily super critical. The key is the thickness of the line, right? Beforehand, we're looking at probably like a 2/2 Weavile line with maybe a Ditto as well, but now because we've got red and blue, we've thickened that line up so we can abuse it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually gone so far as to drop Ditto from this deck because it actually doesn't synergize with red and blue, which is what we're trying to abuse to try and strengthen the power of our deck. So next up, I've gone ahead and elected to have a 2 type null and a 2/1 line of Silvally, 2 of the new Silvally and 1 of the old Gyro unit Silvallis. So that gives our tag teams, just any of our basics, free retreat. So it sort of acts as the Stadium Night City that a lot of people were debating putting in their Dark Box lists in a pinch, which gives us some nice retreat options. It gives us another GX attack to add to choose to from the arsenal. Also, an energy acceleration, which is infamously missing from this deck now that we no longer run the Naganadel line because we've opted to go for red and blue instead. So it does provide a lot of niche things to this deck, but the new Silvally is the real talking point. It's going to help us draw through our deck a lot better, make our Dark Box hands a lot less clunky than they have been in the past, which is one of the problems I would say I had with the deck most often was that you just get these really awkward hands and nothing much to do with them except maybe look for a Cherish Ball and get it a Dene and get rid of it all and try and find something good instead.
Yeah, the new Silvally obviously provides you that extra little bit of consistency that you need. It's also a pretty solid attacker in a pinch as well, being able to use Sensitive Blade, 50 plus 70, and if you have used a supporter, and it also gives you the option to just straight up knock out a Ultra Beast if that does come up. The old school Silvally also really strong, like you said, because we can keep accelerating energy. Obviously, since the Naganadel engine is gone, it means that we're a lot more reliant on hitting red and blue. And if we are able to hit red and blue to evolve into the old Silvally, we can start recurring that energy again, so that we can speed up the attacks on those big tag team GXs and try and get those into play a little bit earlier than we were able to with the Naganadel.
Yeah, absolutely. The Naganadel obviously was more consistent, but a far slower means of getting energy into play. So now we'll move on to our attackers. We play the one copy of Umbreon Darkrai tag team. The old tried and trusted, it's always going to be good. These are pretty much the standards from Darkbox. I play a copy of Greninja Zoroark GX. Not always seen in every build of the deck. I think in this format though, there's a lot of things where you're going to need the option to take one-shots on very important targets, like the new Reshiram tag team with 270. If you can manage to get 8 energy into play, then the Dark Pulse will be able to take a knockout on that bad boy, and I really just think you got to have the option to take a big one-shot in this deck without relying on a GX attack.
Yeah, and the key for it is that you can get into that big one-shot a lot earlier than you used to be able to with the Naganadel. You used to have to discard energy and try and get them back into the field of play that way, but now that we've got red and blue, we can realistically try and get maybe an average of maybe 2 energy a turn in play. You're going to miss every now and then, but with tag call and stuff, which we'll look at later on, you should be able to get it most of the time, and very quickly you'll find that your Greninja Zoroark is going to power up incredibly quickly, and you're going to be able to take those big knockouts.
Yep, and we also have a copy of Mega Sableye T-Tar GX tag team. Greedy Crush 210 help us get through key prize cards, the Ultra Beast turns. There's actually a couple of new ones added to the set after this new set's going to drop. So we have the new Blacephalon, which if you were on 3 prizes, then they can drop 12 damage counters instead of 3 for its attack, which I believe is going to be super relevant. That card is very strong, so being able to skip that is great. Being able to skip Sledgehammer, always great, even though it's not seeing a lot of play right now. Always something to keep in the back of your mind, just for those anti-meta decks and stuff like that. But it's just very strong. Also to skip Beast Ring turn as well.
And I think the key for that is that it's 210, right?
Yeah.
And I think you'll notice, Blake, that there's a card in this deck that lots of other decks are going to be playing that has 210 HP. So Silvally is a prime target for you to knock out with that attack, and Dedenne obviously as well. So you're going to potentially be able to get lots of knockouts with Sableye T-Tar, just to take those extra prizes, and the GX attack is really, really strong as well.
Yeah, Gigafull GX giving you that alternate win condition against a lot of decks as well. Lastly, for potential attackers, but also as a means to accelerate energy, we have a copy of Darkrai Prism.
Darkrai
Which does not like
Darkrai in the lightest position on the board by the looks of it.
Yeah, infamously not liking the light for good reason. But yes, with its ability to attach 2 energy and not take your attachment for turn, and Abyssal Sleep being tremendously strong to wall out your opponent. Yeah, it's just a must-have in these kinds of decks.
Yeah, and it means that you can theoretically accelerate 5 energy in a turn if you are so lucky. So that is super, super strong. And when you realistically combine that with things like Silvally being able to draw cards and Weavile being able to move those energy around, we're going to be able to power up our attackers just as quickly as we would be able to with Naganadel, but with a lot less stress. It's theoretically going to be a lot easier for us to get this energy into play.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the hope is anyway. And then lastly, we have 2 copies of Dedenne GX, just to give us that ability to cycle through the deck in the earlier turns.
Yeah, Dedenne is super, super strong. You can search it out with any Pokemon search that you wish. Apart from Tag Call, you can't use that one. But Dedenne GX, obviously very important in those early turns to get ourselves as many of our basics in play as possible. We're relying on getting energy with red and blue, so we need to have multiple Sneasels and type nulls when we get the opportunity to, and Dedenne is going to help us potentially find them.
Yep, absolutely. So that is it for the Pokemon line. Now, one thing that I might note here is that there are a ton of great new attackers in this deck. In this first draft, though, I just thought of I would stick with what I know and what's good off the top of my head, especially because the deck space was so hard to find in this initial list. But there are so many good attackers that you can add into this list now. We have the new Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff, I think it is.
Yep.
Mega Lopunny Jigglypuff.
Someone like
30,
Wigglytuff.
30 plus 30 for each GX and EX on your opponent's side of the field. A great counter to Pikarom, which can give this deck a little bit of trouble. And also, there's a great new non-GX attacker in the Baby Guzzlord, which is a card I desperately want to find space for in this deck. It's super good against Malamar. Currently, only really like Darkrai is a super good answer to Malamar at the moment. Otherwise, you don't really want to be putting GXs against it too often. But Guzzlord can actually take extra prizes off of Giratinas and one-shot them at the same time whilst not getting returns by them. So an excellent card if you want to tech against Malamar. But since we're going to be focusing on new decks mostly to start off with, and I want consistency more than anything, I thought I'd just stick to what I know off the top of my head. But
yeah, and fair enough.
In future builds, I can definitely see the deck transitioning to more of these new attackers, especially that Baby Guzzlord is one of those ones that I just really want to find space for.
Yeah, it could realistically be very, very good. Another direction you might take it as well is you might go even harder into the red and blue, maybe give yourself the 4th Sneasel or the 3rd or 4th type null just to give yourself extra basics. But yeah, we want to try and experiment with stuff. We want to see how it goes. So that's the key for these Trading Center videos.
Yeah, absolutely. Give you guys a good baseline to work off of, and you guys can fiddle with these lists as we do and make improvements.
Yeah, that's the key.
So we start up, now we move on to the support accounts. We play a good healthy count of supporters. We start off with the four lilies, the tried and true first turn for any deck that's not playing Welder or Green's Exploration, as I said in our previous video, or might be the video before that, depending on how it's uploaded. But yeah, the great first turn supporter until that rule changes. But yeah, it's going to help us find all the stuff we need. Unfortunately, only 2 different types in this deck. Otherwise, I would have opted to go for the Professor Oak's Research, I think it is. But that card is super strong for decks that need to set up. Unfortunately, we only have like 2 different types of basics. We have Dark and Colorless. And even we ran Ditto, just another Colorless. So
yeah, exactly.
I think the worst thing about Silvally is that its type that it evolves off of is not a different color to Colorless. It's just that's the only reason. But otherwise, it's a great card.
Well, just let me do some quick looking here whilst you keep talking. But I think there might actually be a Water Sneasel in the next set. So let me just quickly look that up, just for my own interest. And you keep going.
If there is one, then I'll be happy to play it. But moving on, we also infamously have 4 copies of Red and Blue Tag Team. It's all we've been talking about most of this profile, so it makes sense that we're playing 4 copies of it. We play 5 potential ways to use it, because we have the 3 Sneasel and the 2 type Null, so we want to get down, be able to use all 4 of our red and blues to get 8 energy into play. That'd be ideal. It's not always going to happen. We might play 2 to 3, but we want to at least play 1 or 2 per match and get some energy accelerated in pretty quickly.
Dude, that Sneasel's actually really good. There is one. It has 70 HP, a Dark Energy, Agility for 10, flip a coin if heads, prevent all effective attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon. So maybe it might be worth looking into that, but Lily for the moment seems like a pretty good option.
Yeah, I completely forgot. I only just remember the fact that there was a Water Weavile for the first time, I think, in trading card game history being printed, which had like some attack for 110 or something like that. It's an okay card, but I sort of forgot the implications of the fact that it meant that there would be a water type Sneasel as well. So yeah, that's really strong actually. So yeah, I could definitely see if you could. It means you wouldn't run Tag Whistle probably in this deck. You'd have to run Pokegear just to be able to hit Professor Oak more reliably. Unfortunately, not a tag team supporter. So you'd have to use Pokegear to try and hit it on the first turn and play probably 4 copies of it instead of Lily.
Yeah, stuff
So
that.
I don't
Just
know.
play red and blue. This is fine, but there's the option
Yeah.
there anyway.
Yep. So continuing on, we have 2 copies of Cynthia. Like I've said in earlier content, Cynthia is just great to have as an option. After the first turn, Lily's never going to be as strong as it once was, so having Cynthia as a shuffle draw option is going to be great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the pretty. We've said as much as we're going to say on Cynthia over the past.
It's been out
year,
for a long time, man. Like it's
year and a
Cynthia's
half
good.
or something.
It's a good
Yeah,
card.
Cynthia's good. Play Cynthia in your deck.
Yeah.
Moving on, more tag team supporters. This time we have 2 Mallow and Lana tag team. So this card allows you to switch one of your Pokemon to the bench. And if you discard 2 cards, you can heal 120 from the Pokemon that was switched to the bench. Super strong, especially.
Is it switched to or switched from the bench? I think it's switched from the bench. I'll look that up as well. Regardless, it's still a really good effect.
I'm pretty sure it's the Pokemon that goes to the bench that gets healed, not the one that comes from the bench. I feel like that would be like a weird.
That would be logical, but this game isn't necessarily always logical.
Yeah.
Let me see.
It's a great way to heal your Pokemon, no matter which way it ends up working. And also, pivoting your Pokemon was always something that was pretty painful to do in Dark Box in the past. You used to have to rely on scoop ups alone to get out of the active position, unless you had cut your stadiums down to find to play Night City or Dark City or whatever it's called. Now you can just play a couple copies of Lana and Mallow to help switch around as well.
Yeah, it is healing when you move to the bench, or at least that's the way it's been translated at the moment. I don't know why I got that confused, but it's the one that makes sense.
Yep. And lastly, we have Cynthia and Caitlyn tag team. I feel like I'm one of the only people that's super hype on this card. I feel like this card is just this is just a great card. You have to. I feel like you need at least one of this card in every deck you sleeve up from now on. It's just great to recur supporters. It still draws 3 and gives you your supporter of choice for next turn. So if that supporter is especially scary for your opponent, like if it's a welder, for example, like I can't let them have energy. I'll have to reset stamp or something like that. It's particularly potent, so I feel like just having this option in every deck is really nice, especially when you play super important supporters like Welder or Red and Blue and Lana and Mallow that can really impact the game heavily.
Yeah, and you can search this with Tag Call as well, so it's not like it's a one-off card that you'll never find. You'll be able to grab it pretty consistently as well as your attackers, so it's definitely worth considering, and I think you are one of the only people that's hyping it up, Blake, but I think the more I see it, the more I can see the reasoning. It's definitely worth considering.
Yep, and now we move on to our trainers and items. We play 4 copies of Pokemon Communication. This is what we need to find our Type Nulls and our Sneasels, because we are not playing Professor Oak's research.
No, we're not.
So we need Pokecom early to find it. Hopefully between our new search options and the draw engine provided by Silvally and stuff like that, we'll be able to find these Pokecoms. But it's going to be we're going to be just as reliant on this card as we were in the past. So it's probably still the main weakness of this deck is just trying to get Sneasels out. But hopefully with the bigger line of Sneasel in this in this deck, we're able to have an easier time finding them.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that now we've got a little bit of a thicker line. We're probably going to see those Sneasels more frequently. It's not going to be as tight, and we're not going to be forced to search for other basics to evolve into as well as quickly as we might have had to in the past. So we're at least giving ourselves a bit more time and a bit more frequency of finding those Sneasels and Type Nulls to get them into play as soon as possible. So Pokecom, very strong, and we've got lots of different Pokemon we can shuffle away, so it should be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. A good high count of Pokemon in this deck. We also have 4 copies of Super Scoop Up. Now, this was absolutely necessary in the past for this deck, because, I mean, you play big tag teams, and you want to be able to heal them whenever they take damage, and it doesn't cost you any energy because you have Weavile to move it around. It's one of the biggest appeals of decks that can move around energy, the trans decks. So I feel like these max heal cards are always necessary, but one thing I'm going to be watching carefully when I test this deck is just how many of these I feel are necessary. I feel like this might be one of the potential cuts in terms of just how many we play, so I can fit in these other cards that I want to see. But we'll see. So if it turns out the format has gotten too strong that you can't take hits anymore as reliably, especially with the new Reshiram tag team doing 270 for 3, one-shotting all but one of our main attackers, it might be the case that Super Scoop Up just isn't as strong as it once was in the previous formats.
Yeah, but you're only going to be playing Reshiram every now and then. Super Scoop Up is still a very, very potent card with any trance ability, like you have mentioned, and it's definitely worth considering. But yeah, it could potentially be those spaces that we're looking for. But it's always fun. Flipping coins is fun, Blake. You got to flip as many coins as you can.
Yep, I hate that. So we're gonna play. We also play for our stadiums 3 copies of a Viridian Forest. Just a great way to find our dark energy attachments for the turn. Probably another consideration for cuts, if I'm honest. Before, Viridian Forest was also great because it helped us discard cards for Naganadel, but we're no longer playing Naganadel, so it might not be the case that 3 is the necessary count. So it might be time to either cut down or look for a new supporter to put in the deck. But with the Weavile GX, I don't think we need Night City as much. So maybe we can find a space by cutting down one of these. But I do like being able to find basic attachments every turn.
Yeah, energy attachments are important, and it's one of those decks that does benefit from having as many energy as you possibly can. And even though we are going to be searching for lots of them with red and blue, we still need to find attachments for turn, and Viridian's probably the best way to do that. So not a bad one. It might be a bit thick. Again, could be a potential cut, but we don't realistically want to play we don't necessarily need to play Chaos Swirl. There's nothing that is so crippling to us that if it comes into play we lose the game. Since we're using our abilities rather than using them to defend ourselves, we don't care if Power Plant comes down on our opponent's turn. We should be able to get rid of it. So we should be okay. Viridian Forest seems like the best pick since we have no other real outstanding option.
Yeah. We'll move on to some more search. We have 2 copies of Cherish Ball, tried and true. You got to have outs to find a Dene as well. Even with the new tag call, I think Cherish Ball still definitely has a really strong place in the format. There's plenty of good GXs still. Weavile and Silvally, both non-tag team GXs that in a lot of cases we're still going to need to find without the use of red and blue. And sometimes it'll be the case where we Cherish Ball for a Weavile or a Silvally GX just so we can poke a comet away, and then we can red and blue once it's been shuffled back into the deck. So, with the combination of Pokemon communication, we're always going to be able to find a use for Cherish Ball, and having it when we need it for the Dene GX is going to save us a lot.
Yeah, and that's the key, is you don't want to get stuck tunnel visioning red and blue to bring out your stage 1 GXs. Like, you can still manually evolve them, like, that's still allowed. It's obviously not as powerful, but if you need the extra draw or you need the movement of Shadow Connection, then Cherish Ball is going to be the way to go. And like you said, you can find the Dene. It's the best way to search for that card in this deck.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on, we also have 2 copies of Tag Whistle or Tag Call, whatever it ends up turning into. This card's extremely strong. It finds us our tag supporters and our tag team GXs, so it finds most of our attackers and a good deal of our important supporters as well. So a super strong card in this deck, especially one. Yeah.
I'd really like to see more copies of this card, since we've got all of our attackers are tag teams, all of our good supporters are tag teams. Like, if I'm looking to put new cards into this deck, I'm probably looking to put more tag calls in, but the list is relatively tight. It could potentially be one of those scoop ups or something like that goes for it, but 2 is a solid option. That's still 4 searches, right? So you can still get 4 cards. So it's still really strong.
It's funny. It's such a hard card to think of in terms of like what category it falls under. It's sort of like a Pokegear and a Cherish Ball in one neat little bow. But it's a far better Pokegear, but a worse Cherish Ball. So it's really hard to think of. But I think in a deck like this, where you are sort of relying on your tag team supporter in the form of red and blue in our case, then it might be the case that we need to play more of it. But without having personally played the deck yet, because I haven't had a chance to yet. Obviously, these are brand new cards, and until we get the chance to battle each other in proxy fights and training center, it's going to be pretty hard to see what counts we need. So that's what this is all about.
Yeah, for sure. And 2's the safe option, right? Like, you don't want to overcommit to it because 3 might be bad, but obviously it's a good card, so we still need to test it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on past Tag Whistle / Call, we have 2 copies of Great Catcher. 2 was my default count to go to because we used to play 4 copies of Custom Catcher. So I feel like as a baseline, starting off with 2 copies of this card feels like the right amount. I don't think I ever felt like I needed more than 2 Gusts in Dark Box. So I feel like 2 copies of this card is just fine, especially because there's Spear as an option as well. So I think with a more guaranteed option in Great Catcher, I do enjoy just playing the 2.
Yeah, it's a super strong card, and the best thing about Great Catcher now is that you don't need to find combo pieces when you've got Silvally. Even if you've got like been stamped to like 1 and then red and blued, or like not red and blued, Jesse and James down to 0 cards. If you've got Silvally, then you've still got an opportunity to hit that 1 custom catcher that you need to gust out something for game. Obviously, you lose the ability to be able to gust out those non-GX support Pokemon that everyone plays, but realistically, you should be okay. And for the moment, it's so good. Like, this is the card that we thought was going to do the job for Dark Box without any of the other good stuff. So it's a really, really good card that is going to not only give you discard options to chuck some energy in the bin to be recalled by Weavile GX if you want to, it can also thin out bad cards, gust out good GXs that we can knock out, remove threats from the board. It's really good. This is a good card.
Yeah, before with custom catchers, if you wanted to play that card, you'd have to go on and use like a supporter like Erica to draw the amount of cards you needed to be able to put together the 2 custom catchers you needed to bring up one of your opponent's Pokemon. But now you don't need to draw so many cards. There's only 1 card you're after. If you're not holding it already, you just need to play any other draw supporter is fine. You don't have to dig through your entire deck with such a big draw supporter, and you have to rely on a inconsistent draw supporter like Erica's that can let you down in the early game.
Yeah, all you have to do is make sure you've got a couple of cards in hand to discard. So yeah, good card.
And we'll finish up with 1 copy of Reset Stamp, just good to have in every deck just about. So I can't see a reason why you wouldn't want to play it. Disrupts your opponent when they're further ahead than you are, so, or even when they're not, even if it's close. It gives you an advantage, and I can't see a reason to not play a card that will give you advantage at some point in the game. Seems good to me.
Yeah, that seems pretty strong. Can't complain.
And that does it for all of our item cards. And lastly, we just have energies. Pretty simple here. We have 3, 6, 9, 12 dark energy. A little bit more than what the standards builds used to play, I think. Not by much. I'd like to see it actually even higher than it is, but like I've already said, this is a really hard list to build and keep to a strict list, to a low, to just 60, to be honest.
Yeah. It's hard to keep it in that 60 limit.
So many cards I wanted to put in. I wanted to put in more tech attackers. I wanted to put in more whistle. I wanted to put in more dark energy, more basics like the Sneasels and the type nulls. There's so many extra cards that are great that might come up for this deck. So it's going to be hard to tell whether or not, which ones are the most important. So when we figure out what cards we can cut and what cards we can replace them with, then we'll be able to see what important cards get to go in their stead. But for now, just the 12 dark energy, and I think that'll do us just fine, at least for the testing period.
Yeah, it should be fine. Realistically, what we're looking to do is we're looking to play red and blue 4 times if we can, and 12 dark energy means that we can play red and blue 4 times and still attach every turn. So we should be fine. Looks like a solid list, Blake. I'm excited to see it in action. I think we're gonna have this deck up against Reshiram to start off with. That we've already done profiles on both of those lists, so we may as well have a game with those 2. But yeah, I'm super hyped for this over the next few months. I'm expecting it to do really well, and I'm also expecting it to bite me on the butt and come back at the end of these 3 months saying, yeah, Dark Box was pretty bad.
Yep.
I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a careful optimist at this point to what Darkbox can do. It's got all the tools now. All that's left is to make the right list and hope that it's good enough. If it's not good enough at this point, the only thing that could potentially make it better is more consistent healing cards. And if those come out, the deck's still not good, then maybe it's just not good enough.
Yeah, maybe it's just not good. But hey, we'll test it because we like it. Thanks, Blake, for sharing the list with us.
No worries.
And thank you to everyone for coming along. If you like the content, then consider subscribing. Click the sable line in the middle of the screen to do that. On the left-hand side, we have some videos YouTube thinks you'll like. And on the right, we have our Cosmic Eclipse Training Center playlist for more profiles and matchups. Thanks, everyone, for coming along, and we'll see you all next time for more from the Sable Eyes. Bye.
Bye.